Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all on a blonde balayage on a natural, well, not a natural, it's actually kind of like a fake brunette, but a sneak peek of her after right here. My client has a natural, more like level, she's kind of like an in-between, like a mousy level like 6. So we've done lots of blonde on her, but we've actually been keeping her more brunette in the past few appointments, and we've both been loving it. I actually think it kind of like flatters her features a little bit more. And so what we do is an all over more medium brown on her more so throughout, and then we do a little bit more of a blonde money piece on her. And it's like the nice, perfect, happy medium of light where we need to have light and dark where we need to have dark. And I'm so excited to show you guys this tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting out is just this more faded all over color. So her color is kind of faded to more of like a warm-ish level 6. I haven't seen her since the spring, so it actually faded fairly well. And this is my root on her. I use L'Oreal Dia Color 4N and 5B. 5B is their cooler base brown. And then this is the color that I use through her mids and ends. And so what I kind of like to have happen is it's more of a rich, darker base that kind of fades into more of like a medium-ish brown on her ends. And then we do her money piece as well. So most of her formula had more of the 5B. I did just use a little bit of 4M or 4N, sorry, just for a little bit of extra depth. My client actually she drives like 2 hours now to come see me. And so I only want to see her like 2, 3 times a year. So I just wanted to give it a little bit of extra fade time on her. And then with the formula on her ends, I feel like it lasts a little bit better. So same thing. I do kind of formulate at a little bit of like a half level to a level darker just to give her a little bit of extra fade time. I only really recommend you formulating a little bit darker for your client if you are comfortable with the client itself and you know your color line very well and you understand how it's going to fade also. But when we were starting off taking her brunette, I formulated right at that level just to make sure that that was something that we were going to keep with long term. But like I said, it sounds like we're going to be keeping the brunette for a hot minute. So obviously I'm starting off with like my standard all over color placement. I will say what I always do like to do with my all over colors when I'm doing more of like, I'm going to call this more like a color melt where I'm doing different tones on the roots and a different tone on the ends, is I do like to kind of apply this in like a teardrop kind of root where you see me taking diagonal back sections. And the reason why is because then it kind of helps to give it like that shadow rooted depth kind of look where it's going to be a little deeper and longer of a root towards like that back center area. And then as we make our way to the front, it's just a little bit more brought up. This is just something that you can do that will just kind of help to make your color placements, set them apart from, the standard ones. We're kind of taught in school to just take like standard horizontal sections, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is just, again, one little thing that you can do to elevate the overall look. And so I'm also I'm taking diagonal back sections, and I'm also applying the root at more of a diagonal as well. And then what I also like to do is use my brush and thoroughly brush everything as well to kind of give it more of a diffusion also. I really love the brush that I use for this. It is the ventilated wet brush. And the reason why is because it's really gentle on the hair. It's not like super, it doesn't tug too much. But also too, it helps to like bring the color down a little bit more for an added extra blend, but it also doesn't like drag the color like through the ends either. I think we've all accidentally had that brush that we go to like brush the color through a little bit just to make sure it's like distributed evenly, and then we realize that it's like kind of leaving spots in some random spots. I will say the one tip I have for that is I like to kind of brush color through in like a C-shaped motion. So what I kind of do is like scoop the brush off of the hair just ever so lightly after I kind of like get through like that shadow rooted color placing section. If you're still struggling with it, feel free to use a wow comb. It's formulated for a blending color, but without dragging it through the dry hair. My typical favorite way to do these placements when I'm doing a base color with highlights is I like to get the base color applied on first, typically if you're doing a base color, you're not expecting for the highlights to like go all the way up to the scalp. You can do the highlights first and then the color in between, but that I struggle with that even still to this day. It's just so hard to apply color in between that you know you're gonna like hit every single color in between the foils. So 9.8 times out of 10, I do the color first to get it out of the way. And depending on what you're doing too, if you need to, like the lightener can possibly potentially like lift through the color a little bit if you need it to. But in her case, we didn't need to anyway. So we are doing a money piece placement. I will say I'm gonna be bringing her money piece back. It's gonna be like a money piece placement and like partial hybrid because she only wants it to appear like it's more like the money piece. However, there's a couple different reasons why I'm going to be kind of like bringing this back a little further. One, because we are doing more of like that bronze kind of highlight, but we're doing such a dark base. I don't want it to look like it's just like a harsh line between like blonde and brown. So as you guys are seeing, I'm making these sections very, very rooty, and that's going to help. And then bringing it back. So as you guys are going to see, I'm kind of like extending this back a little bit further. If you've seen my tutorials before, you already know I always say we need to count the like ear area as part of the money piece anyway. But also too with that, I want there to be a lot of connection in between the money piece and the dark parts of her hair than two around it. But what you see is I'm taking these sections extremely, extremely low. I am placing it a little higher because what I try to do is like I only really try to bring up her money piece like twice a year. So probably when I see her in like another 3-4 months, if I do see her within that time, I probably would just need to touch up her color and not her actual money piece unless if we're like changing the placement or something of the sorts. But another reason why too is because my client actually has extremely fine, thin hair, so her density is really low. So if I was only truly going in her money piece area, it would truly like only look like she's got like strings worth of a money piece. So I kind of treat her whole front area as her money piece, and we also do a really heavy face framed haircut just to kind of give her like some movement in the front because she does have long hair too. Like I said, it's just really fine and thin. So this is where I kind of go into saying like every look needs to be a little bit more like customized and curated, and we can't have like cookie cutter placements for everybody because any of my clients that have more thick hair, I would not have to and I wouldn't want to place their money piece nearly as far back. But with how my clients' hair lays on her when she pulls her hair forward, and again, just due to the fact that she just does not have a heavy density and she doesn't have thick hair in general, I kind of have to like expand her money piece back to kind of fake the appearance basically that she does. And since her hair is long, but we do a lot of we do a lot of face framing pieces, I didn't want it to look like breakage either. I hate nothing more than like the short pieces that like are lighter and then everything else is dark. It just like draws unneeded attention to that. And so what I want to have happen is that these like longer pieces that you see me doing back here kind of act as like transitional spots that kind of help to transition that boldness in the front, and they're just really a lot more rooted and diffused. And again, as you see, I'm placing this really, really low, and it's just I look to those as they're going to be more soft transitional pieces from the front to the back, if that makes sense. So this is definitely more of a placement that I would only do on someone with fine, thin hair. Otherwise, I would consider this like a partial or like a halo placement, essentially. So keep that in mind. With my lightener, because I am applying this kind of through old color, and I only need this to process for, 20-30 minutes, I did go in with 30 volume, and I did oligo blacklight lightener. And I wanted to make sure if I was applying this over any areas where there was a little bit of color that it was going to be basically like active enough to kind of eat through that color too. If I was letting this apply for anything like longer than that, if I knew it was going to sit for anything longer than that, I would definitely have dropped down to 20. But since I was doing this second in the process, so I knew that the roots were going to be done and ready whenever, And with the gloss color that I do, I only wanted it to sit on for like 20-25 minutes anyway too. I wanted everything to kind of like process and be done with at the same time. Mainly use Coloro Gloss for the all over end color, but I do, just to kind of give her hair a little bit of extra dimension, I had a little bit of leftover root color, which I mixed up. I over mixed that purposely for a couple reasons. One, I wasn't sure if I would kind of want that root color for a little bit of like a root tap later on. And then B, I wanted a little bit of extra root color so that I wouldn't have to just pull a Color Gloss off through the ends. And so that kind of helps to give it a little bit of extra like depth and dimension in some spots. So I use the Coloro Gloss is an acidic alkaline hybrid, and alkaline colors for demi-permanent, it's going to be a little bit more opaque, but it's also going to give it a little bit more longevity. But then the more acidic colors, it's going to be more gentle, and it's going to actually stick on better to people that have more porous hair. So like I said, this client of mine, we were taking her blonde for a while, and we actually had her pretty blonde before we took her dark. So when I first took her dark, I did all of it Coloro Gloss because, like I said, it has that more acidic formulation, but it has that more like alkaline level of hold. I normally like to start off my clients that go dark. I normally like to start them off like this, or at least fill them or do like a starting repigmenting level with the Coloro Gloss because it does have that like little bit more like that gentler approach. And then the second time that I took her dark, which was the appointment prior to this, I was able to then take her all dark with more of the Dia color, which is all alkaline. And the reason why I switched her over to all alkaline is because, again, it's more opaque. It is going to have more longevity, and it's not going to fade as fast. So as you see, like I said, I haven't seen her in like, I think it was like 5 months. So this actually was an amazing fade with this. It just kind of like exposed a little bit of warmth. So that kind of told me then that I could go back in with more of the Coloro Gloss. That's going to be a little bit more acidic. It's going to have more shine. And then also too, if she ever does want to go back lighter or anything like that, it's gonna be a little bit more easier to lift through. And I prefer to do different types of variations, which is why I kind of like the fact that I was able to kind of switch off and do some sections with the Dia color that was more alkaline and some sections with the Coloro Gloss. Because the Coloro Gloss, while it is more, it's pretty opaque for it being a gloss, but it does kind of have that more like dimensional feel. But I do like in Brunettes for it to have that richer, more like opaque kind of finish too. So we really got like the best of both with the finish out of this, and I was honestly obsessed with it. It had that richness because, as we all know, like 5B can be pretty ashy and can appear dark, like basically like almost like black basically. So I didn't want her hair to appear like that by any means. But we did know that we do like a pretty like rich color on her. So I feel like I was able to have a good mix of color that was going to be really rich in depth, but was also too going to have that more like dimensional, not hollow, not super solid type of finish on it. Once when I was finished with applying the color through the back, you guys are going to see me kind of applying it through the leave outs of what I didn't foil for her money piece. That's what you see me kind of dragging in through here. Mostly for the front, I did all gloss color just because that is obviously a little bit of like the lighter formula. And then something else, I don't know if you guys could notice, but I even just all over when I saturated the color, I left out the last like inch or two of the ends. And I'm leaving that for the very end, just to kind of help, again, same thing, just to have it, give it a little bit more of like a lighter fade. And I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a graduation from darkest at the top to like lightest-ish at the ends. So as you can kind of see here, if you're looking towards the very ends of her hair, I left all of that out. And the last 10 minutes of her color application is then when I went in and drug everything then through the ends and saturated it thoroughly through and brushed everything through, as you guys see me doing right in through here. So if you're ever worried about like color, if you want it to kind of not have that overtone, we've all seen those all over colors where it's just looked over deposited on the ends or whatever that looks like. Fine hair people are common to that. People with really porous hair are gonna be kind of common to that. So don't be afraid to like let things sit for a couple minutes before you drag things all the way through. Something else you could have done, if I wasn't doing like a foiling placement, if everything was all staying dark and I didn't have to worry about the blonde towards the front. I honestly probably just would have applied it all at the bowl, but you know, it is what it is. So that's another way that you can kind of give it that effect without, if you can't always like just do a gloss on everybody at the bowl. What I do like to do with base colors that have highlights through it too is, as you see, I'm using my fingers and I'm kind of like massaging and rubbing that all over color through that like mid shaft area where the lightener meets that color placing area. Just kind of helps to give it like kind of a Shadow Rudy-ish effect. If you wanted to, you could let it even sit like that for a few minutes, but what I just opted up into doing was applying a little bit of that leftover color. Since I had a little bit of the leftover color, I just kind of did like a mock shadow root situation. But here is the end result. As you guys can see, it's super rich. Here's her before, and then I'll be showing you her after here in a second too. Super rich without it being too hollow, but it's got that perfect like neutral vibe, and it still has like that lighter graduation towards the ends as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.